Ratings Center. And a good morning to you. Welcome on this Friday morning to the Art Lewis Show. Later on at the 10 o'clock news, going to be talking about a concert coming up, and going to be with us this morning, Kevin Cole by phone, hopefully, because he's out of town taking care of a project. But in studio with me will be Greg Gwaltney, who is with Kevin on this particular production. At 11 o'clock, we're going to learn about something called Pure Energy, and that will be coming up during Focus this morning. But for this hour, I'm going to spend it with a good friend who I have a great deal of respect for. He is probably the most positive individual I have ever met in my life. No matter what the situation, no matter what the time, no matter what's happening in the world, his outlook is always uplifting. And he has a story to tell this morning, and it's a follow-up to something we talked about yesterday. Yesterday we had Jacqueline Peabart on from Adoption Option, my guest in studio, and his lovely wife, Kim, are honorary chairs this year of the Jambalaya Jazz event, which we'll tell you about. And he is the one and only Paul White.
I can't believe I'm actually on the greatest talk show host ever show.
You see, friends, this is why we like each other, because we just sit and tell each other lies.
What a privilege to be here today. I am so excited and
great to have you. Great to have you.
Really excited to share some of our story.
And it's an interesting story. Now, I mentioned that Paul and his lovely wife are the honorary chairs of the Jambalaya Jazz event next Thursday for Adoption Option. But there's a good reason for it, because you are adoptive parents, are you not?
We are, and we didn't utilize Adoption Option in our story, but we came to have great respect and admiration for the organization. And as we learned more about them, and the work they do in the foster care field is incredible. Yeah. In my humble opinion, they're saving lives every day. And I'll explain what I mean by saving lives every day in a little bit here, because the work they do is just overwhelming.
Paul, let me ask, you and your lovely wife, Kim, what brought you, first of all, to think about adoption?
So here's our story. We got married April 22nd of 1995. A few months later, I read this article in the newspaper about the single-child policy that China had, and how what that single-child policy did was create these orphanages with a plethora of unwanted children. One, because if you only get to have one child, in China, a boy was preferred. And so if you had a daughter, and then if you had a child and got pregnant again with a second child, that could get you in a lot of trouble. So I remember reading the article, being moved to tears, reading about the situation of these orphanages. And I went to Kim and I said, hey, would you ever consider adopting a child? And she replied immediately, sure.
Let me just interrupt just for a second, just so we get things in perspective. Did you have your own child at the time?
Not at the time. We had just been married, and we were only a few months.
But this wasn't a reason because you couldn't have your own children.
So again, here's our story. Kim said, well, let's try having our own and see what it is, and then we'll talk about maybe adoption. Right. Yeah. So our first son, Luke, born in 1996, just a beautiful child. Second son, Adam, born in 1998, born with Down syndrome. And that was a wake-up call. And I think one of the reasons you call me positive, and I think one of the biggest things about that can explain my positive outlook on life is that I never battle with God. Kim and I both have strong faith, and I never battle with God, and I never say, why me? I mean, I'm curious, just like you're a very curious person and stuff, but when he was born with Down syndrome, immediately Kim and I said, we're going to be the best parents that any child with Down syndrome has ever had. And for 27 years, we've attempted to do that.
I would have expected nothing less from you, Paul.
Yeah, so we really didn't go through the why me and, oh, this is terrible and everything else. We just said, let's get busy and make this a wonderful life.
Any advance notice that it was going to be Down's baby?
No.
Only after birth did you find
They
out?
informed us about 24 hours after he was born. They kept us overnight. We were ready to go home. I mean, it was a beautiful birth. Adam was incredible and stuff, but people kept coming in the room, the hospital room, and looking at him and stuff, and they wouldn't say anything. And then 24 hours later, a doctor came in and said, we think he has Down syndrome. So, again, it was boom, just like that. What are we going to do about it? So there were some tears, and we hugged each other and said, we're going to be the best parents a child with Down syndrome ever had. And we had said that with our first son, Luke. And so that was 98. We have four sons. They're all Eagle Scouts, by the way.
Really?
They're all Eagle Scouts, which we're very proud of, because scouting really helped us in our parenting, including our son, Eric, who's the youngest. He's 21 right now and a junior over at Aquinas College in Grand Rapids. And scouts really helped us form his life and give him a leg up on what he had missed, because Eric joined our family when he was 5. Now, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, because in 1999, we had 2 kids, and I'm going through Leadership Midland. And one of the things that you needed to do before the Leadership Midland long weekend came was you had to attend a court session. And so you had to pick one of the courts. I picked probate court. And you had to go for either the morning or afternoon session. So I chose afternoon, and there was another person going through Leadership Midland with me that was there. And we got there early, and the judge at the time, Donna Morris, came out and said, are you the people from Leadership Midland? Yes. And she said, okay, I've got 2 cases. The first one's cut and dry. It's not a big deal and stuff. She said, the second one is a tough case, and I'm not sure how I'm going to rule on this. And the case, she said, I just want to prepare you. There's going to be a 10-year-old boy. Both parents are going to be present, and it appears that neither parent is willing to take this boy, and I think I'm going to have to put him in the foster care system. Now, they both had, in their mind, legitimate reasons why they were dealing with their own life and couldn't take care of this child. And I'm sitting in the back of the courtroom in tears. And
I had to ask a stupid question. Were they going to be testifying about their feelings in front of this 10-year-old?
Yeah, and that's what made it so difficult. So, again, they both had their own legitimate reasons, and both of them were willing to say,
let him go.
Judge, we accept you putting him in foster care. So I go home and I said, hey, Kim, what would you have done had I brought a 10-year-old boy home? She said, I'd love him.
I would have expected nothing less.
And so I knew right at that moment, I didn't know that adoption was in our future.
Yeah. You, ladies and gentlemen, you can hear the emotion because this story is from the heart. And I've known Paul a long time, known the story. And he brought an ample supply of tissues with him today. So you're in the court, but you can't do it right then and there. What happens next?
Well, you can. He got put in the foster care system, and I have no clue what his future life has turned out to be. So I'm just finishing Rotary. I'm out in the parking lot talking to a friend of mine on March 4th of 2010. And I get a call. I look down. It's from my wife. Hey, honey, how you doing? She goes, great. Hey, what do you think about an addition to the family? I go, that'd be awesome. Boy or girl? She said, boy. I said, how old? She said, 5. I said, what's his name? She said, Eric. I said, when do I get to meet Eric? She said, you have a meeting at 4 when you get home. He'll be at our house. 35 seconds that changed our life.
And
when I say change, what I really mean is improved our life.
so you had 3. He becomes
So yes,
fourth.
our son John was born in 2001, and so this was March 10th of 2004. And he came to our house that night and has never left.
And so that he's adopted then too.
So it took 2 years. We had a precedent-setting case in the state of Michigan. It took 2 years, and on March 5th, 2 years and 1 day of 2012, we came to find out, so his adoption was finalized. We went to Big Boy so we could all have banana splits. And so there's all these people, our attorney and related people who had been a part of this journey for his adoption to be finalized. We're all at Big Boy, and there's these 2 women sitting a couple tables away. And they keep looking over, and we had balloons on our table and everything, and they couldn't help but overhear, so they come over and they say, "Did you just adopt him?" And we said, "Yes, just earlier today." And they said, "We're both adopted." And we refer to this as Gotcha Day. And that was so powerful. Yeah. Gotcha Day. We gotcha. And no one can take you away.
We'll take a quick break, come back with Paul as we talk about adoption and how it's changed his life and his wife's life and how you can get involved in adoption option and all of that and other things too when we return. And his wonderful wife, Kim, are adoptive parents. They are also the honorary chairs of the Jambalaya and Jazz dinner next Thursday that we'll tell you about at the Great Hall for the benefit of Adoption Option. Jacqueline was with us yesterday to talk about it. We're telling the story of Paul's family and how he became an adoptive parent. And, I mean, I've known Paul a long time, folks. There are stories after stories after stories. And all positive. They all turn out positive. He all wants them to be positive. You were talking during the break about a story about someone you saw speak at the center.
Yeah, so if people can remember the movie The Blind Side, just an incredible story about a wealthy family who ends up adopting this kid in high school who goes on to play in the NFL. And it was the real-life father who adopted this son who played in the NFL. And he was speaking at the Center for the Arts. And he took questions from the audience. And one of the questions was, what was your number one takeaway from that whole experience? And he said 2 words, turn around. And when he said turn around, what he meant by that, you can go on YouTube and you can find this if you put in turn around from The Blind Side. And Sandra Bullock, so this Michael is in high school, he's homeless, doesn't have a place to stay and everything. And they come up to a stop sign and he's going to walk in front of them. And the dad rolls down the window and says, "Where are you going?" And he goes, "The gym." And they said, "Oh, okay." And so he walks by in a T-shirt and shorts, and it's cold out. And so they turn left the opposite way that he's walking. And Sandra Bullock, you can see her mind just working. And all of a sudden she says, "Turn around." And so, her husband turns around and they go. And it's funny because she ends up talking to him and saying, "The gym is locked. Why are you going to the gym?" He said, "It's warm." She said, "You're coming with us." And he did, and he never left. And those 2 words, turn around, because when I heard that, I started thinking to myself, how many opportunities do we have in life to turn around? And this was emphasized when the probate judge that did our adoption and everything was a Rotarian with me. And we were at Rotary, and we had been nominated and received this Angels in Adoption Award in Washington, D.C. and stuff. And she was talking about it to our Rotary Club, and she goes, had the whites not stepped in, I can't imagine what this young man's life would have turned out to be. And Kim and I never saw it that way. It wasn't like we stepped in to save him. We stepped in to provide for him this life that wasn't available in his current trajectory.
It's interesting when you think of those two words, turn around. It can have multiple meanings. Yes, there's a turnaround if you're going in the opposite direction. You turn around and, as they did in the movie, caught up to this young man. You also turned around his life.
Well, yeah, and
that's the other turnaround, and that's a big turnaround.
And the judge said stepped in. Those two words in the movie, it was turn around. I think the biggest thing, and I read this book that had a huge impact on me called Under the Overpass, about two guys that lived as homeless people. They were in college. They took time off, lived as homeless for 5 months. And they talked about never receiving dignity, how many people, they'd look down the street and they'd be sitting there. They had guitars playing, but they were homeless. And people would cross the street, walk on down, and cross back so they didn't have to walk in front of them. And so many people wouldn't even recognize them or let their eyes meet.
I grew up seeing that in New York City with homeless people in the subways and what have you. You could just stand there and just watch people avoid eye contact.
Right.
And all of that.
Right. And so what happens, if you really think about every day of your life, there are opportunities to turn around or step in and make a difference. Could be small, could be major. Doesn't matter. And it's just like when people
can turn into major.
Well, it's just like when people look at Kim and I and they say, oh, you guys, what you did was so great and everything. Two things. One, they don't realize how we benefited from having Eric join our family in terms of we just see things from a new perspective and the perspective of people that struggle in life.
All right, we're going to take a break, come back, and we're going to ask you a question I never asked you before.
Okay.
Paul White's with me in the studio. He and his wife, Kim, adoptive parents and the co-chairs, I would call them celebrity chairs almost, but they're the honorary chairs of Jambalaya and Jazz. Next Thursday, we'll tell you about that, too, before we're done.
Gotta go.
You are the most positive person I've ever known in my life. You exude positivity. You've written books on it. You write articles about it. At what point in your life did you turn positive, or were you always positive?
Wow, great question. So I would say I've always been positive, and that was from the innate curiosity I've had since I was a little kid. I was the one that was always saying, why? And I'm just so curious and everything. And then I'd also go back and say that when I was 22 years old, I read a book called See at the Top from Zig Ziglar. It changed my life, that book, reading that book. And I saw him twice shortly thereafter in person. And I just couldn't believe he was the most positive person I had ever listened to. And he had all these funny phrases like, you need a checkup from the neck up, and you got to get rid of that stinking thinking and stuff. And I just, I embraced that type of mentality, and it has served me so well. His big thing, the number one quote from him is, you can get everything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. And I've tried to live my life that way, and I believe I have. It's what led to any success that I've had in life. And, it's also why I think so many other people have mentored me and taken an interest in me, because I'm so grateful for their help. And it's just led to a wonderful life.
So I have to ask, has that been handed down to your sons?
I believe it has. I believe that our children have really picked up on that. And, of course, the love from Kim. I think our parenting strategies have worked out extremely well. And we really based them on, I've talked about it before, the 12 core values of scouting. All 4 of our sons are Eagle Scouts, and that had a huge influence. And then our faith. We didn't just, go to church every Sunday. We were intimately involved in our faith, and Kim in educating through faith formation classes and everything. All of our kids, she was always the leader, and our participation with our church in trying to share the love of Christ with everyone we come in contact with. I'm a pretty simple-minded guy, and when I heard that the 2 most important commandments were love God and love your neighbor, I said, I think I can probably do that. So that became my focus. Love God, love your neighbor. If what you're doing fits into those 2 categories, you're doing a good thing.
All right, let's, before I forget, let's talk about the coming event for Adoption Option next Thursday.
Yeah. So
jazz, jambalaya and jazz, right?
Yeah. So this is really the theme of what I'm going to talk about when I'm there. It's that they're saving lives, and I'm going to refer back to when Judge Doreen Allen was standing in front of Rotary and said, when I think of what this little boy's life might have turned out like had the whites not stepped in. So what I've come to realize, there's organizations like Adoption Option that are saving lives out there. They're turning lives around. And from the foster care system, it's the biological parents sometimes that they turn their life around so that the children can be reunited, which is the goal of the foster care system. It may be that they work with the foster parents and work on the family dynamics with them so that these foster kids are being provided love and care in the foster family setting. And then they work with the foster kids. And, yesterday we talked about, when you were interviewing Jacqueline, we talked about how so many people, when they adopt, want this brand new shiny baby. And I get that. And I embrace that, and I support that, and I'm good with that because they're saving a life, too, of what that child's life would have been like. It's when the kids get above 6, I think she said, that it becomes a little bigger issue, and it changes. And one of the things, I read a book called The Deepest Well, and they talk about adverse childhood experiences. In the industry, they refer to them as ACEs. And it has to do with how a child's brain is wired, the way the synapses work in the brain and stuff. It's really deep and everything. But when kids are in a difficult or unhealthy situation, if their parents are screaming at each other or if there's danger, they go into fight or flight. And our brains are so wonderful. Fight or flight is like, we don't want you to sit there and analyze, hey, there's a bear running at me that looks like it's going to devour me. What are the chances that I can outrun? Or it's just like, run, and that's the fight or flight. Well, these kids get in situations where they go to fight or flight. It shuts down all the other synapses from firing. And so they get wired different. That first 5 years of life is so unique in how our brain develops and everything. And so the work that Adoption Option's doing in the foster care system is changing, improving, and saving lives for what those lives would have been. And, of course, they're always moving towards positive outcomes, whether that means reunification with the biological parents or possibly adoption from the foster parents, or helping these kids in the foster system, if they age out, develop a worthwhile, fruitful, and loving, caring life on their own.
All right, we're going to take our last break here, and then we will be back with Paul White, talk more, and also tell you about next Thursday's event and how you can get tickets and all that stuff. In the meantime, let me take a moment to talk about Quick Lane Freeland and McDonald Ford. They are together on the same property, all part of McDonald Ford. Winter is upon us, folks. Sorry, but that's true. Ice and snow will be along, and winter driving habits. You want to be as safe as possible when you're driving in the winter. One of the things you may not think about is your tires, because there is a difference between winter tires and regular tires. Here's John from Quick Lane Freeland to tell you all about it.
Hello, Art. Yes, winter tires are made with a pliable rubber compound that includes silica to stay flexible and maintain grip in freezing temperatures. Unlike harder all-season tires, which stiffen and lose traction in the cold, this flexible compound allows the tire to better conform to the road surface, providing superior grip and traction on snow and ice to keep you safe.
Thanks, John. Stop in to Quick Lane Freeland at McDonald Ford and have your tires checked. And also, by the way, remember that they sell all tires at just $5 over cost. While you're there, have them check your cooling system, too. It's another important part of winter driving. It all happens at Quick Lane Freeland at McDonald Ford, two names that stand ready to help you with all your automotive needs.
Hi, I'm Katie.
Back with you here on WSCW, talking to Paul White. He and his wife Kim, adoptive parents, and the honorary chairs of the upcoming Jambalaya and Jazz event for Adoption Option next Thursday at the Great Hall. How are tickets available?
Well, the easiest way for your listeners is to go to adoptionoptioninc.org. Adoptionoptioninc.org. And that's the easiest way to get tickets. But why would someone want to get tickets?
Well, do tell us, Paul,
yes,
why?
I can tell you why, because it's an opportunity for anyone to make a difference. First of all, Adoption Option covers 22 out of Michigan's 83 counties. They provide services in 22 counties. So everyone in the listening audience has Adoption Option providing services in their community. And the second thing goes back to, why would you want to purchase tickets or even make a donation? Because you're helping change lives. You get to be a part of the work that they're doing. They do all the heavy lifting, and they're changing lives through their work with the foster care program and with adoption.
And the thing that amazed me was this was just a brainchild of one woman who started it a number of years ago,
and now they provide 54 jobs.
Yeah, that amazed me when Jacqueline told me that yesterday. I went, whoa.
Yeah, 54 jobs for a nonprofit. That's a lot of people to employ. And that makes a difference in our local economy, too. I mean, those people all live and work in the places that we work, play, and live in. So it's really an opportunity if you can make it to this Jambalaya and Jazz on Thursday night, and it's going to be great. I mean, great food, great music, and everything. But it's the reason that you would be present that allows you to feel good about making a difference in a part of our society that I don't want to say is neglected. It's kind of pushed off to the side, just like I was talking about homeless people.
Well, there's another good reason to attend. You get to hear Paul White and meet him and his lovely wife.
Well, yeah. Well, it's going to be short. Reason. Yeah. People that know me, it's like, oh boy, Paul, temper it down. But and I will. But there's such an important message there that I want to share, and I really appreciate that you allowed me to share that message here today.
You knew I would. Paul is welcome anytime, because it's always a positive message, and I get positive feedback when you're on. So
yeah,
you're always welcome about anything, anytime.
So everyone, please go to adoptionoptioninc.org, purchase tickets, make a donation, or get involved. If you have interest in becoming part of the foster care system in terms of parents, being foster care parents, what a difference you could make. And, it's funny because so many people say, oh, I could never do that. And I politely disagree with each and every one of them, because I think people are unaware of what they're actually capable of. And just because their door hasn't been knocked doesn't mean that when it does get knocked on, they won't answer it.
Paul, always a pleasure. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks, Art.
Paul White and his wife, Kim, we thank them very much for what they have always done and continue to do. We'll be back in a moment.
We're proud to make
right, our thanks to Paul White for being with us. Coming up, we're going to talk to Greg Gwaltney.